Hey everyone, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Rebekah Tweed, Executive Director at All Tech is Human. If you're unfamiliar with the organization, we are a nonprofit based in New York that brings together a global community of over 30,000 people. Together, we're building the world's largest multi stakeholder, multidisciplinary network in responsible technology. We emphasize three things. One, leveraging the collective intelligence so that we can most effectively tackle thorny tech and society issues in order to co create a tech future that's aligned with the public interest. Secondly, we emphasize diversifying tech to include more backgrounds, disciplines, and lived experiences. And we are looking to be best positioned to meet the challenges that we face as a society. Thirdly, we emphasize greatly increasing the pace of tech consideration to meet the challenges of the moment because we know that tech is not slowing down. We need to move at the speed of tech. Our goal at All Tech is Human is to build and strengthen the responsible tech ecosystem. We do this through multi stakeholder convenings and community building, multidisciplinary education and resource development, and through our career development efforts to establish a robust, responsible tech talent pipeline. So we have many activities for you to get involved in. You can check out alltechishuman.org for details on our mentorship program, our university network, our 7 working groups, our talent pool, our talent matchmaking program. You can check out our job board. You can join our Slack community of 9,000 members across 91 countries. You can subscribe to our newsletter. And if you're watching this live stream, you're probably interested in responsible AI. So be sure to check out our Responsible AI Governance Maturity Model Hackathon report that we recently released in partnership with Tech Better. We also have a generative AI principles white paper called Safety by Design for Generative AI, Preventing Child Sexual Abuse that we released in partnership with Thorn. And if you're in New York City, we encourage you to register to attend the Algorithmic Bias Bounty Challenge Hackathon that we are hosting in collaboration with Humane Intelligence. That will be on July 9th at BetaWorks in the Meatpacking District. And that'll be the first in a series of 10 algorithmic bias bounty challenges that Humane Intelligence is organizing. And they're doing that as part of their efforts to convene a community of practice engaged in public accountability mechanisms for artificial intelligence. So today's discussion is part of our weekly live stream series. In particular, this is our 3rd installment of this month in responsible AI. We are keeping tabs on what is happening in responsible AI, AI governance, AI policy over the past month or so. I am thrilled today to be joined by Renée Cummings. Hi, Renée.
Hello, Rebekah. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Fantastic.
Excellent. So for those who do not know, Renée is an AI ethicist, criminologist, futurist, data science professor of practice at University of Virginia, non-resident senior fellow at Brookings Institution, and a senior fellow here at All Tech is Human. We're very thrilled to have her today. We will be taking questions from the audience. So if you're watching this live right now on LinkedIn, please do drop a question into the comments. We want to know what you're thinking and what you're wondering about. We're going to spend a good amount of time at the end on your questions. We also want to know where you're tuning in from. Also, have you been to any of the many AI conferences recently discussing responsible AI or AI governance? Were you in Rio for ACM Fact? Were you in Seoul for the AI Summit, or maybe Brussels for IAPP's AI Governance Global, or maybe Geneva for the UN AI for Good Summit, or maybe you're in London right now for the AI Summit? We would love to include your comments and questions into our conversation, so please add them to the comment section, and we're gonna jump right in. So Renée, first of all, I know you've been doing a lot of traveling and speaking. You're always doing a lot of that, and I never know where in the world you're going to be. So I just would love to know from your perspective, meeting so many different people and sharing stages with other experts. Would love to hear from you. What are people concerned about in responsible AI right now? And are there any themes that you're hearing about or patterns that you see emerging in what people are discussing?
Well, thank you so much, Rebekah. And I would highlight 2. Last month, at the end of May, I was at the World Economic Forum's technology retreat that brought together leaders in the data and AI space from all over the globe. The conversations were around how do we build responsible, sustainable, and resilient AI systems? How do we deploy national AI policies? How do we think about global governance of AI? How do we think about responsible global governance of AI? So all of the conversations still around how do we maximize the rewards? How do we minimize the risks? How do we understand our responsibilities? How do we build this resilient technology? But how do we think about the radical implications on society? And how do we bring together the requisite kind of due diligence and duty of care that's required? So conversations around ethics, conversations around safety, conversations around security and trust, legitimacy, and also conversations about how do we build public confidence and how do we build public trust and how do we engage the public more in the ways in which we are designing and deploying these systems. Conversations about public oversight, which is so critical and still lacking. So it's really about countries just thinking about their own positions and now understanding that data and AI is the greatest geopolitical game changer ever in history. And they want to be in the game, but they want to be in the game responsibly and they want to be in the game safely.
Yeah, that's great. So I want to turn right now to kind of some things that we've been seeing from industry. I want to talk about what happened with Google's AI overviews and why we're still having to talk about hallucinations and the whole problem with accuracy with generative AI. It seems like we're often talking about whatever random company is making headlines that day for deploying whatever chatbot that might have said something embarrassing. But this time, it's Google shipping AI overviews to serve up AI generated summaries at the top of search queries. And social media, especially X or Twitter, was recently filled with examples of this feature kind of going awry and recommending adding glue to your pizza or eating one rock per day and other unwise results. So it seems like we're going to keep talking about this every month, just a different company dealing with a different headline grabbing debacle. So what is going on here? Why is generative AI accuracy still such a tough problem to solve?
It's about the large language models and how large these models are and the large action models. And now we're putting text and video and audio and just everything but the kitchen sink into the ways in which we are designing these models, right? The challenge is this: we're scraping. We're putting things together and we still don't fully understand how these things are combining. And of course, the scale at which the combination of sometimes these idiosyncratic approaches are deployed. So it's going to be one company today, it's going to be another company tomorrow. This is why ethical AI is so important. This is why responsible AI is so important. This is why accountability and transparency and accuracy and audibility are so important. And this is why public oversight also very important, because these are emerging systems. These are technologies that continue to emerge. As things emerge, they're going to be great things. They're going to be not so great things. But too many of these companies, because of competition, because of commercialization, because of trying to get to market before everyone else or even before the market opens, right, are trying to do too much with these models, and they're selling us a dream in the sense that many of the models are doing great things. Let's appreciate that. When it comes to thinking about creativity, when it comes to thinking about how it has assisted many individuals with their own work, when you think about persons with disabilities, of course, you're thinking about neurodiverse individuals and the great things we can get out of these large language models. But the hallucinations, and I don't call them, it's not hallucinating, it's just doing nonsense. And we've got to appreciate that's the limitation of a large language model. These models aren't foolproof. That's why they deploy such foolish things.
Yes, yeah, well said, well said. And I think that was something that was notable about what just happened with Google's AI overviews. You have this kind of caricatured version of what happens to all large language models deployed in this way, where they are making up, they're making things up. So
this is
that
why I
is,
just wanted to
yeah.
put in there, this is why duty of care is so important. And this is why we have got to really think about, how we're deploying these models and ensure there are the requisite levels of disclosures and disclaimers. And you come out and you say, this is the limitation of the model, but no one's going to do that because they're trying to sell a product. So they sell you the best aspect of it. And then now you interact with some of the troubling aspects of it. I think if companies really take the approach that, listen, this is something that's emerging. This is something that's, changing and, snowballing every time we sort of engage with it. But these are the things that it cannot do. And of course, these are the things that we need to think about. So I always say it's a good thing that we have organizations like All Tech is Human keeping us on our toes when it comes to responsible AI.
Yes, well said. And the public accountability mechanism aspect of this, I think, was really interesting too. Where you have something going wrong very publicly, and then there's this opportunity where like everyone sees, on social media, we have this ultimate public accountability mechanism. You have this strong social reward for stress testing Google's products. You might have your tweet go viral. So I think it's a really interesting moment, kind of this AI literacy moment, where everyone has the opportunity to see what can go wrong with large language models, to play with it and stress test it, and maybe be socially rewarded for doing that, where we all can see, chatbots hallucinate and and the accuracy problem is just it's built in. It's part of how
And it's
how
also
large language
about,
models work.
you're testing something in a controlled space. You're testing something in a design space or a lab space. When it hits the street, when it interacts with the real world, when it starts to engage in real-time experiences and it starts to engage with real people, then you see the challenge. So you can do as much risk assessment, you could try to detect and mitigate as much as you want in a lab. But until it hits the real world, until it hits that individual who's working on something in real time, we're never going to truly understand the impact. So we could model test, we could red team, we can field test. All these things are very important, but we're always going to see some sort of risk popping up.
Yep, exactly. So another tech giant that had to walk back a newly announced AI product feature is Microsoft. But not for accuracy issues. This was more about privacy concerns. So Microsoft Recall takes constant screenshots in order to help you find anything that you've ever seen on your PC. And after this announcement, the public did not appreciate that aspect of having their screens constantly being captured. Then you can contrast that with Apple's recent announcement of private cloud computing, where Apple, in order to incorporate AI throughout its products through Apple Intelligence, is extending the company's privacy features into the cloud. So privacy is something that remains a major concern in responsible AI, whether you're talking about data privacy or biometric privacy. So Renée, how should we be thinking about data privacy when you have industry approaches that are so different, from Microsoft's approach to Apple's, and Apple's taking this novel approach in order to continue to prioritize user privacy? So just would love your take on this aspect of responsible AI and how we should be thinking about privacy.
So this is what I always say, privacy is dead in the world of data and the world of AI. There is no company, no organization, no agency, no country, no individual, no friend that can offer you 100% privacy. Of course, these are questions around trust that many of these companies are dealing with. It's about their brand. It's about whether or not we're going to trust them. They can try their best to do all that is required to deploy the requisite level of due diligence and duty of care and do all the risk testing that they want to do. And they can provide you with a measure of privacy, but there is no system. And I think we all understand that in the world of AI and the world of data. that offers you 100% privacy. Privacy systems are not foolproof. We know that. I think what we've got to understand is that, yes, a certain measure of privacy is required and should also be legally required. The ways in which our data is captured, the ways in which it's shared, the ways in which it's collected, the ways in which it is used, the ways in which it is disposed, even data in the afterlife. These are all critical questions around privacy, but no company can really sell you 100% privacy. There have been flaws. We've seen it. There have been leaks. There have been breaches. There have been hacks. There have been bad actors. There have been mistakes. There have been things that people just were not thinking about, that they overlooked. All of these things can create privacy challenges. So yes, we could improve on it, and we need to improve on it. We need to legislate on it. I know Vermont recently put forward the Data Privacy Act, which is being considered something really comprehensive. I like it. That minimum duty of care that limits the amount of personal data, and of course, it really is a goal scorer for online safety for children as well, which is so critical. A minimum duty of care when dealing with minors. Of course, that the private right to action, very comprehensive piece of legislation that Vermont hopes to really take to the table and hopes it becomes law and becomes effective. The other challenge with this, many of these privacy laws that are now being negotiated and the different ways in which scholars and policymakers and legislators are navigating this privacy terrain. All of these laws go into effect in 2025 or 2026. We know what a difference a day makes in the world of AI. So many of these legislative best practices and good measures may not even be relevant. We saw what happened to the EU's AI Act. Boom, the act was looking really good, still looks very good, but then generative AI is not a part of what that act offers us. So this is what we've got to think about. And I always say in the world of AI, you need real-time governance and real-time legislation. But we know real-time and legislative work and real-time and governance really don't go together. So we've got to think about how relevant are these laws going to be given the speed in which this technology is being developed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a huge concern. Want to talk a little bit about another part of data. Instead of dwelling on the privacy aspects, really curious right now to talk a little about, about the training data, copyright and intellectual property. This has major implications for the future of generative AI. And we've heard about quite a few deals recently being announced between publishers and AI developers that license publishers' intellectual property to tech companies for use in their training data. Recently saw News Corp, which owns Wall Street Journal, saw The Atlantic, Vox Media, the Financial Times, Associated Press, and others. So when we're thinking through this part of data, how do you see things evolving when it comes to this ongoing battle between copyright holders and AI developers using everyone's intellectual property in the training data for these tech tools? And do you think all these recent deals between publishers and AI developers, and even thinking about OpenAI and how they pulled the Sky voice after complaints from Scarlett Johansson, how will this impact independent creators' intellectual property and how things can move forward for all of us, not just these big players?
This is such a great question and such an interesting topic that has really captured my attention. Let me just say I am not a copyright lawyer, and the saying goes, I do not play one on TV. I am a criminologist and I do appear in a crime TV show, but I'm not a copyright lawyer. But this is very, very interesting because I consider myself a creative. And yes, we have seen these, the marriage of media and journalism and many of the companies deploying the large language models. We're also reading news stories where the journalists are covering these companies, and now they have to say, for full transparency, we have a relationship with this company, but we are giving you a very accountable and transparent article here. So the thing is this. many of these cases that we are seeing are going to be cases that really change the world of copyright and intellectual property, because we have never had these experiences before. These are all new experiences. And even this concept of vicarious infringement that I read, a few months ago, that really stuck in my head, and when we think about intellectual property, we're thinking about trade secrets and proprietary secrets, and thinking about all of these things and how they really impact our creatives, and thinking about that question of profit and profit sharing. It's really interesting stuff. So I will say this to you: I don't have the answers, because even our judiciary and our courts and our lawyers don't have the answers. The answers are being created as the cases come. But what I will say to you is that I have been really looking on. I've been doing a lot of reading. I've been very intrigued by these cases. And I think with bated breath, like most of the world of responsible AI, awaiting to see what these judgments look like, and how they impact all of us. What I will say is sometimes my heart goes out to creatives when I think of this technology and how this technology can replace so many people who have given their artistic best, and really thinking, how do we combine this technology with our artists and our creatives in a way that they could all benefit from it? It's a really, really sort of rocky intellectual terrain, but it's a space that's going to create some of the greatest law we are going to see in this time and in our history.
Agreed. Yeah, I too consider myself a creative, and I'm also waiting to see what happens with all of these different court cases. And I do think that these types of deals that are being made maybe make it a little more challenging for independent creators. If these deals are moving forward, then it means there's less pressure, on
And
these companies. But yeah.
it's also troubling. I will say this: I began my early career as a journalist and a television broadcaster. And when I see these relationships between these companies that own these large language models and, of course, media houses, I'm always thinking of my fellow journalists. What happens to our journalists? What happens to our editors and our sub editors and our copy team? I remember when computers came in and our paste up artists no longer had a space in the newsroom, but they had to learn to use this new technology. So what I would say is that I think journalists and individuals working in the media space need to get real savvy and real sophisticated in real time with this technology, and see how they can combine this technology to take their journalism to that next level. But it's also something that I think about, because I just never like to see anything that means the journalists are going to lose their job, because it always comes down to our own mental health and our livelihoods and our families, and just I think my heart is always there with journalists.
Agreed. So moving away from responsible AI themes and the impacts of recent moves by industry, I want to get your take on some of the recent policy developments. So we've been seeing some policy movement happening at the state level in the US. Wanted to see what you think about what kind of impacts these might have. So wanted to ask specifically, what should we know about Colorado's consumer AI protection bill? Because this is, Colorado's recently passed bill, SB 24205, on consumer protections for artificial intelligence. And this is concerning consumer protections in interactions with AI systems. And the bill requires a developer of a high-risk artificial intelligence system to use reasonable care to avoid algorithmic discrimination in the high-risk system. So just curious what you think about this bill and what we should know.
So, and you raised a great point. We're seeing state by state, and we're hoping for federal. But at the moment, we're going to have to take state by state. Colorado's consumer protection for interaction with AI, again, step in the right direction. It looks at developers and, of course, deployers, and it also looks at critical areas. And what this bill is also saying is that you've got to do your risk management. You've got to do your impact assessments. You have got to put your disclosures out there. You have got to show those documents, documentation and traceability. all very critical. It's very comprehensive, and it really is considered compliance by design. That's what they're looking at. But the challenge is it speaks to reasonable care. And reasonable care is really not defined in the bill. But what they do offer is what they call rebuttable presumptions. And those presumptions are really, have you done your risk assessment? Have you deployed a risk management strategy? Do you have a contingency plan? What is your documentation? How can we trace what you have done? Is it transparent? Is it accountable? Is it accurate? Is it auditable? And how have you, really thought about your duty of care? And have you created the right kinds of this duty to warn, right? Have you shared with people what kinds of risks that they may endure if they engage with your technology? So it really is a comprehensive piece. It is also a very solid piece of work. It puts compliance to the fore. It says to you, design needs to be, of course, compliance ready. And it really speaks to bringing a risk management approach to the ways in which we are thinking about this technology. So before you design and before you deploy, you've got to think about those risks. You've got to mitigate, you've got to manage, you've got to evaluate, and you've got to ensure the product that you're putting out there is going to do the least amount of harm. And if any harm is done, you've got to understand that you are now dealing with questions around liability, and you've got to understand that it will be your negligence, and you've got to now prove that it was not willful misconduct. So a lot happening with that legislation. Again, it's something that is very good for Colorado, and it's state by state, and hopefully more states would start to mirror these kinds of legislations. But we don't want only to focus on state by state. We want the federal government to give us something good when it comes to the ways in which we secure and ensure the technology is safe and trustworthy as well.
Exactly. Yeah, it seems like this is kind of what we have to work with right now. And I do wonder how things will move forward on the federal level. Maybe we won't be able to have much movement until after the next presidential election. But really hopeful that something comprehensive can come about sometime soon. There was another, California recently proposed a bill, and not sure if if you wanted to talk about that
Sure.
at all. But yeah, California has proposed the Safe and Secure Innovation for Frontier Artificial Intelligence Act. And yeah, it looks like this one is, let's see, SB 1047. So yeah, is there anything that we should know about that?
Sure. So with California, the question is whether or not we can do ethical innovation or inclusive innovation. So you have companies saying that, wait a minute, this bill is too draconian. Businesses are not going to be able to comply. Businesses are not going to be able to deal with those fines. It's going to cost too much on the legal spectrum for businesses to really compete. The persons who are against it are saying what you are going to see is businesses leaving, tech companies leaving California in droves and going to other states where they can create all the loopholes that they want. So it's really another very positive piece of legislation. We can do ethical innovation. We can do inclusive innovation. We could do safety and we can do ethics together. But I think there's a lot of fear. And I think the fear around the bill is that somehow it's going to stymie innovation and creativity and the ability to really sort of manipulate new and emerging technologies in ways that are not hampered by too much legal constraints and legal ramifications. I think it's a solid piece of legislation. I think, if anything, companies should not be thinking about losing money because of the legislation. I think what they need to be thinking about is hiring more ethical and responsible AI experts and really building public oversight into their products and really beefing up their teams that look at questions around risk and rights and the ways in which we need to get responsible AI deployed at scale.
Agreed. We have quite a few of those types of people in the All Tech is Human
Most
community.
definitely. Maybe they need to call All Tech is Human and ask All Tech is Human what to do, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, so we have time for one more question. We'll do an audience question here. So I saw one from Kimberly Owens here. For Renee, at the recent conference, did the topic of questioning the trustworthiness with the companies developing frontier models, uh, referencing OpenAI under Altman's leadership, and the ScarJo debacle, safety concerns by former OpenAI researcher Daniel Kokotallo and Helen Toner, sharing the what and why about Altman's firing last year?
Well, hey, Kimberly, how are you? And I will say Kimberly is a friend, and I love Kimberly. And of course, Kimberly worked with some of my UVA students, graduate students, on a fantastic public interest technology project that looked at human trafficking. So I just want to say that it was an exceptional piece of work. Kimberly, all of what you've asked was really not discussed at the conference, but those things are really discussed very nicely in a recent article that I read in Vox that looks at all of it, you know, the duty to warn, who was fired, why did the company take someone back, whether or not these companies and their boards of directors are really up to the task of managing the design, development, and deployment of responsible AI, and really questions around whistleblowers as well. That's a very critical question when it came to this recent open AI kind of event where past employees have been saying we need to think of not only the ethics but the safety questions, and we need to have this duty to warn. We have to pay attention to those omissions that may cause people harm. So these are critical questions that are being ventilated nicely here by Rebekah and being ventilated in the media space, and it's something that we need to pay attention to. Listen, this is a great time for innovation. This is a fantastic time to be alive. I love technology, but I love the fact that we need to get technology right just as much as I love the technology. So I think, if anything, it's a big moment for responsible AI. We cannot have ethics versus safety. Ethics is about safety, and safety is about ethics. So it really is, all of those questions are critical questions. And once we come up with the answers to those questions, then we can really deploy the kinds of policies and procedures that are required to lift up a responsible AI.
Well said. And that brings us to the end of our time together today. So I want to thank you so much, Renee, as always, for your brilliant insights. We appreciate you so much. And everyone can keep up with Renee on her LinkedIn. You can keep up with me on LinkedIn as well, and keep up with everything that All Tech is Human is doing at alltechishuman.org. So thanks to all of you for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.